It's Cambridge 105 Radio. My name's Glenn Jones.
Cambridge 105 Radio.
Now, there have been some amazing pictures in the press this week of medieval wall paintings uncovered in a loft space during renovations at Christ's College. Dr Christina Faraday is an art historian at the University of Cambridge. Morning, Dr Faraday.
Good morning. Lovely to talk to you.
And to you as well. I'm just looking at these images now. They look to be in remarkable condition.
They are. They're very well preserved. And it's such an exciting thing to find something of this date still so vibrant, you know, with all the colours and the evidence of its making still visible.
How long have they been covered up for?
Apparently, they were last found 300 years ago. So there are renovations happening at Christ's at the moment, and the builders discovered these, and everyone was very surprised. And then they had a sort of rummage in the college archives and found that these had actually been seen in the 18th century, but they were news to us.
I can imagine. It must be such an interesting discovery for someone in your position as an art historian as well. Just having a look here, I can see a rose there, a portcullis. That looks like a crown. These decorations are all very regal in style.
Yes, so the symbols are all representing the college's founder or refoundress, Lady Margaret Beaufort. The college was originally called God's House and had existed since the 15th century. But then in 1505, Lady Margaret Beaufort, who was the mother of Henry VII, re-endowed the college, and they sort of celebrated her. And one of the ways they did that was visually with these incredible wall paintings. So the symbols all refer to her. There's a red rose of Lancaster, which was, when we think of that, you know, the famous story about the Tudor rose that Henry VII had ended the Wars of the Roses and married the heir to the Yorkist side of the Lancastrian and Yorkist War, and then created this combined symbol, the two roses. But all of that is a sort of later fabrication by Henry. The white rose of York did exist, but the red Lancastrian rose, really, apart from a handful of possible references, only seems to come into being with Henry VII. So it's a symbol that is really tied up not just with Lady Margaret, but also with her family's sudden catapult to the top of English society. So that's why that's in the middle, and it's got this big closed crown over the top, which is an imperial crown. It signifies that Henry VII, he didn't just want to be a king, he wanted to be an emperor.
Thinking about this, I mean, if you're a college and you've got the mother of the king as your foundress, you're going to want to make a big thing of it, aren't you? And it looks like that's exactly what we've done here.
Well, that's exactly what they've done. And obviously the portcullis, it's the kind of gateway that you would let down behind a drawbridge to keep your castle secure. That's another Beaufort symbol. So that really does underline that this is a Lady Margaret Beaufort institution. But it doesn't just benefit the college, it also benefits the Tudors, because Henry VII had a really weak claim to the throne. He didn't really have any right to be there at all. So he goes around, and Cambridge listeners will be very familiar with this, you know, King's College Chapel. He really stamps those Tudor symbols on every building that he has a right to. So yes, it's certainly good for the college to say, look, we've got a royal patron, but it's also pretty good for the Tudors to say, look, we're actually royal and you have to obey us.
You think of branding as something modern, don't you? But this is like the Tudor equivalent of that.
Absolutely. The Tudor marketing machine was working overtime here.
It's not only the artwork that you've uncovered here, though, is it? I mean, looking at these images, you've also uncovered just how this artwork was created. I'm looking at all these compass marks I can see that they've used to create the rose.
Yes, that's right. So somebody would have traced a circle in the plaster just very finely, not in a way that anyone looking from the floor would have been able to see, because these paintings would have been quite high up. But that would have just provided the guideline for the painter, whether it was the same person or someone else, to make a really neat rows. And that's another thing that makes this such an exciting discovery, because wall paintings were not considered expensive decoration. They weren't especially highly valued. They could be easily replaced and updated, when fashions changed. So for us to have such well-preserved early wall paintings and a sort of complete scheme of them from one end of the room is really exciting.
I was going to say, how rare would this have been at the time? Because I'm thinking of those incredible paintings just up the road at Longthorpe Tower. For years, weren't they whitewashed over those? I mean, how have these managed to survive?
Well, these have survived in the roof, where no light has faded them, and there obviously hasn't been enough of a disturbance for the plaster to break off. But at the time, wall paintings were incredibly common. They were basically the cheapest, easiest form of decorating your house, perhaps short of having some kind of plain hangings. And of course, even fewer of those survive because moths and things get rid of those. But they are preserved. You're talking about other examples there, but it's true that we often find wall paintings behind other layers of plaster, and we don't even necessarily know that they're there. So I would encourage anyone living in an older property to, notice if there's something colourful behind the plaster. But in this case, I think they've survived because of their preservation in the loft space.
It's amazing when you think about it and wonder how much is left to discover as well.
Well, exactly. What else is lurking behind the plaster? I know Christ's shortly going to renovate the other side of the early range, so who knows what else they might find.
I expect this presents a new challenge, not just for Christ, but for the university as a whole. How do you preserve something like this?
They will be treated with expert conservation techniques, so making sure that there isn't any flaking and, that everything is stable. And then I think for now, the plan is to cover them back up again until, it can be decided what to do in future.
Indeed, it must be so helpful being discovered at an institution like the University of Cambridge, where there are experts such as yourself, experts in all sorts of fields, just there and waiting to be consulted on this sort of thing.
It was lovely to get the email from Christ's press manager to say, we've got something we think you'd like to see. And that's absolutely true. Of course, that I'm a Tudor specialist, but there are people over the university with different interests, just ready to take an interest in something that the college has discovered.
Obviously, this is something that's very much caught the public's imagination. Is it still fascinating to someone like you, or have you seen it all now, or is this still special to someone like you?
Oh, this never gets old. It's so thrilling when something new is discovered, and particularly something that hasn't been seen for 300 years, and which obviously has never been photographed before either. So, it feels like you might say, well, what new is there? What is there new to discover about the Tudor period? But as this shows, there's all sorts of things that we might not be aware of, just waiting out there to be discovered. So I, for one, am absolutely thrilled about this.
Dr Christina Faraday, thank you very much indeed. You can see the images of this on the Christ College website. And if you're into your Tudor art, you've written extensively on the topic, haven't you?
I have, yes. My book, Tudor Liveliness, is out with the Paul Mellon Centre and Yale University Press.
Dr Christina Faraday, thank you very much indeed for chatting this morning.
Thank you very much.